Started. Welcome everyone. My name's Bryn Durgan. I'm the Director of Programming here at Bookstore One. Thanks for being here today. If you haven't been here before, I know many of you have. Of course, we're a bookstore, but we also do writing workshops and live radio theater and all sorts of events up here. And it's because of support from people like you that we're able to do this sort of thing. So thank you again. So now let me introduce to you the author of the hour. She is one of just several dozen space anthropologists worldwide and a PhD candidate in science, technology, and society at Virginia Tech. She has conducted fieldwork at Spaceport America and worked with more than 80 commercial space companies. She holds several degrees in cultural anthropology and has research featured in Aussie Magazine. Is that how you say that one? Yeah. Aussie Magazine, Anthropology Now, The Geek Anthropologist, Physics Today, and many more media outlets. And she is, of course, the author of the book that you have to get today, Ground Control, An Argument for the End of Human Space Exploration. So let's welcome Savannah Mandel. You can turn your mic on. Hello. Okay, cool. So we can start by talking to us about where your fascination with space began and how it turned into what it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it truly has been a journey. You know, when I was a young kid, my parents were really good about, I guess you could say, immersing me and my sister in culture, science, technology. They took us to museums and archaeology sites at a very young age. My mom would wake us up in the middle of the night to go see meteor showers and look at Mars and Venus, and I loved this. I absorbed it. My mom would read Archaeology magazine or Smithsonian magazine and put it in my hand when I was 10 years old or younger. And I loved space. I loved the idea of futurism and progress and science fiction. And by the time I was in high school, I think like many high schoolers, the prospect of being both Indiana Jones and an astronaut had crossed through my mind a lot. I wasn't very good at math, so I decided to be Indiana Jones instead of being an astronaut, which is a shockingly easy career to pursue, actually. So in all honesty, I was like, okay, you know, it's going to be really hard to be an astronaut. Can't do that, so I'll go get an anthropology degree. And as I'm getting my anthropology degree at the University of Florida, I still had a love of space. I still had a love of science and technology. I still wanted to gobble up that information and adored science fiction. And as I neared the end of that degree, where I did work on some archaeology sites and never cracked a whip, but I played the role of Indiana Jones a little bit, I had to start thinking about grad school. And when I went to talk to an advisor about grad school, I remember her asking me, she was like, you know, when you're thinking about grad school, you need to think about the things you want to research and what you love. What are those things, and how can we, you know, figure out how to locate that within the school you want to be at? And I was like, okay. I started rattling off a list of things I like, and I was like, you know, I really like space. I like science and technology. Like, can I research space as an anthropologist? And this woman, she looked me dead in the eyes, and she was like, no. And you know, to give her credit, she was a Mesopotamian archaeologist. She didn't know that there were anthropologists who were researching outer space. Most anthropologists don't. I mean, I still have tenured professors who reach out to me all the time and are like, this is really cool anthropology work that you're doing. Like, how is this being done? Who is doing it? Send me more literature on it. Show me the journal articles. And I do. And so I left her office thinking, okay, it wasn't possible. And the reason why she didn't think it was possible was because most anthropologists have to go conduct field work in a field. As in, you know, you see these anthropologists traditionally who are going to live with a culture, community in the jungles of the Amazon. And how was I supposed to do that in a space context? What did that look like? So I didn't think it was possible. My journey then took me to the University College London for a master's degree. And I went into it thinking, okay, I'll find something to research. but I didn't know it would be space. And just in a casual conversation with a professor, I mentioned, you know, I was like, I really wish I could research space. I think that would be very cool. And he looked at me, he's like, you can research space. Like, I research space. And I was like, what? And sure enough, he researched space. His specialty area was actually the human body, sex and reproduction as an anthropologist. And he researches how humans might change as they evolve, how the human body exists in closed spaces. And he introduced me to other anthropologists at UCL who were studying outer space, and that they did exist. They showed me this. And I just happened to get lucky. I was like, just happened upon 3 of the very small group of anthropologists who are researching outer space in the world. And they showed me, you know, look, there are anthropologists out there who are researching outer space. So at this point in time, though, I still loved outer space. I did. I thought humans should go. I thought everyone should go. I was like, space is progress. I was hell-bent on that narrative. And so he shows me the literature, and he's like, you need to find a field site. And that's when the work began. I started looking up, okay, what did other anthropologists do? You know, they had worked with NASA on the Spirit and Opportunity rovers. They had worked on underwater research laboratories off the coast of Florida. That was really cool. And I just started cold calling space missions and sites. Like, you know, the PIs of space missions have their emails posted online, and I would literally just email them and be like, I'm an anthropologist, this is what I do.
What's a PI?
A primary investigator.
Oh.
Yeah, the head of a mission.
Okay.
I know this is a really long response to your first question.
No.
So sorry. The journey is a long one. Yeah. And so I sent a lot of emails. I called a lot of people. A lot of people were confused about what anthropologists would do, work, and how I would work with a space mission. I think that's a totally different question. And finally, I heard back from people at the Commercial Spaceflight Federation in Washington, D.C., and they actually said, I think Spaceport America in New Mexico would be interested in having you come out there and do field work with them. Well, I did go out to Spaceport America, and when I was out there, I loved it. I did field work like any other anthropologist would do, and what that looked like was I shadowed them, I conducted participant observation, I attended their barbecues and their baby showers, and the longer I was out there, the more things started to not add up, and I started to have these questions about why we were going to outer space and who was getting a say and when we were going to outer space and how we were going to outer space. And when I then went to DC, Washington, DC afterwards and started working in space policy, the questions continued to add up. And especially the time I went to Washington, DC was when the Space Force was being created. And it was a time when not just the Space Force was being created, but Artemis was being developed as well. And we just switched so rapidly from a desire to go to Mars to a desire to go to the moon. And I saw this intensely militarized version of the space industry. I saw an intensely colonial space industry. And I also saw some very, very clear things that as a young anthropologist who had training in those topics that just didn't make sense. And I just had all these questions. And this is the point at which the person who loved space started being like, how do we make sense of these things? So for example, at Spaceport America, you had individuals who were paying their taxes to create a spaceport that was supposed to bring economic prosperity to the area, and these people were in the lowest income bracket for that region. And one of the reasons that the spaceport was supposed to bring economic prosperity to the area was in jobs. but most of the people who worked for the spaceport were actually coming from outside the state or from Las Cruces or Albuquerque rather than the actual neighboring towns. And I was like, okay, so how do we make sense of that? And then you see that mirrored in French Guiana, where the ESA spaceport is, where you have protests outside the French Guiana spaceport because the cities around French Guiana don't have things like basic utilities and potable water, but they have high-speed trains to move rockets to the spaceport. So I started having a lot of questions, and all these questions amount to, well, how do we find a way to make sure everyone is getting a say in why and when and how we go to space, and that the rewards from outer space exploration are distributed equally. And this is how I kind of went from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
Very long answer to the question.
No, I mean, it's a complete answer.
Yes.
Definitely. Checked a few of them off the list. What do you think about, this is a hard cut, but what do you think about the situation that's happening right now with the two astronauts who are currently stranded?
Well, I mean, it's tough to say what I think about it. I think that we all know space exploration is always going to have like the risk of complications. I think when anytime an astronaut goes into space, they know there's going to be risks. I think anyone who says they're up there having the time of their lives, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, we have like Scott Kelly on record saying, like, you know, there were issues when I came back after being up there for a year. And I think there's gonna be issues when they come back biologically, like to, you know, to their eyes and higher risk of cancer. You know, human space exploration has just risk. It has risk. We've seen it throughout the entire history of it. So does it surprise me that something has happened? No. I mean, it's happened in the past.
Okay, and one thing that your book sort of explores, but it'd be great if you could talk about a bit here, is you write about how human space exploration is typically seen as sort of an escape from a lot of society's flaws, but really you see it more as a mirror for society's flaws. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I think that, interesting, yeah. I think it's like, I've never
Like the getting away from Earth's problems.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So, okay, so a big point of the book is that I don't want, the reason why, the book does not argue that we should never send humans to outer space. It argues that we should focus on unmanned space exploration and deprioritize human space exploration. And that in the future we will be able to prioritize human space exploration, and that part of the reason for that is that the motivations for why we're sending humans to space right now are just a little bit flawed. I mean, part of the reason for that is the rise of the commercial space industry has had pros and cons for space exploration as a whole. Some of the cons that the book points out are that, you know, is space tourism what we should be prioritizing when we could prioritize something like climate change management with those resources, or issues like scarcity on Earth? They're just things that I find a lot frivolous when it comes to commercial space. Right now, my current project I'm working on, which is like book 2 in my dissertation, is on asteroid mining, space mining, and the commercialization of space objects. And that's another good example of, like, should we be prioritizing the mining, should companies be prioritizing the mining and the sale of space resources when they could be prioritizing the management of mining operations on Earth, when mining operations are so often like so destructive environmentally, socially, culturally. So I think that it's the reasons we're going to outer space right now that are so harmful politically and socially and culturally. One question I get asked a lot, actually, by audience members is it possible to manage earthly issues and also focus on human space exploration? And it's one I've been thinking about a lot. And I think that it is possible, but like not with the current space landscape because of the way it's focused. But I think if human space exploration were truly focused on scientific enterprise, or so for example, like there are a lot of things we do in space for climate change management, right? So if we were sending humans to space to learn things for the sake of climate change management, then that works out for things on Earth. But if we're sending humans to space because we want to have man on the moon again for national posturing, then how is that helping with pressing issues on Earth?
That makes me wonder what your feelings are on the Apollo mission and how that shaped space exploration.
Well, okay, so the Apollo program happened within this completely different context of the Cold War. You know, one time for a school paper, I tried to answer the question, and I posed this question to myself of like, could we have not gone to space during the time of the Cold War? Like, could America have just not gone? When Sputnik launched, what would have happened if we just didn't go? Like, if Russia had indeed had superiority in space, what would have been the results? I mean, what would that have meant for our country? And it's a really hard question to answer. I mean, it's truly a different scenario of what was going on at that time than what is happening now. Because what is happening now is almost like a Silicon Valley fueled race between capitalists rather than like a race fueled by like the pressure of a war that just left like two huge like globally shattering wars, right? World War I, World War II, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Korean War, all happened back to back. And then you go into the Apollo program, and what you have now, though people within the space industry will say, well, if we don't go to war, China will gain superiority. What I think is really happening is you have like a lot of just entrepreneurs trying to make money, and a lot of, you know, nationalism for the sake of nationalism rather than true, like, we're going to blow each other up if this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I think too, especially right now, there's a lot of exasperation over many advancements. There's always a catch. There's always some sort of damage that's done, and that can always be pointed to. But there's this exasperation over how to balance the pursuit of knowledge, but then also the risks and consequences. What are your thoughts on how we can better do that?
Yeah, you know, the book explores this a lot, this idea of technological progress being tied to the pursuit of knowledge, and also space specifically being tied to progress. I think it's very terrifying to a lot of people to let go of the idea of having mankind in space, because there's this rhetoric and this attachment that like it is inherently connected to progress. And I think we really need to pause and figure out why that is. Like, why is space travel the technology that we have connected to progress? And also why is, and where does that come from? And I'll say too, this is a very American thing. Like, if we look at our American passports, the moon is on the back of it. I was recently doing interviews for the asteroid mining book, and I was talking to a participant who's based in South Africa, and he didn't know this. He was like, you have the moon in the back of your passports? He thought this was the funniest thing in the world. And he didn't have the same sort of sense of attachment to the moon. I mean, he had investments in it, like physical, financial investments, right? But he's like, I get it. He's like, it feels like a very American thing. I think this idea of it being bound up, I think over time, we can bind the idea of progress to other technological advancements. At other points in history, progress was bound to other technologies too. But at the moment, we think, well, Earth will only succeed. The human race will only succeed. We will only move forward if we do this thing. And there are other ways to move forward. And the radical change that I personally believe needs to occur is attaching the idea of progress to the idea of maintenance, of a maintenance culture of, hey, progress is maintaining our Earth, stabilizing our Earth. And it's a scary move. It's scary to sit there and think that there will be no humans in space. It's really weird. It's weird. It is a radical shift. But radical changes have to be made for there to be radical change. And that's what the book asks for.
So naturally, it's critical of manned space exploration. And we were talking a bit before where I was surprised at some of the responses of a book arguing for the end of space travel. And I'm wondering how it has been received, what you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, responses have been all over the place. I get fan mail all the time, but I also get so much hate mail. I now have in my contact form, my email, a specific line for it. I had a bunch of neo-Nazis come for me actually because my last name's Mandel and that's a Jewish last name. They said space progress is the only way the Aryan race will succeed. This was wild. This happened on Twitter. 300,000 people liked it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, and this was clearly these are just crazy internet cult people, But I mean, it makes you think about what space space has become like an ideology, a religion to so many of us. I mean, we were growing up as kids, looking at the stars and thinking something emotional. And it means something emotional to a lot of us. And then I had people who reach out to me on email and say, I love that you wrote this and I've never felt comfortable telling people that I feel the same way. Because it's really scary to talk about it because it's an emotional thing. But yeah, no, I have a whole bunch of people on LinkedIn who hate me. I will say I was on a podcast the other day and someone asked me, they're like, what's the demographic of these people? And I will say it tends to be white men who typically own a space company.
Okay, so that's 3 people.
Yeah.
We know them.
Yeah. It varies, and I'm not surprised. I totally expected that when I wrote it.
So speaking of, this will be the last question before we turn over to you guys.
Yeah.
Thinking of being a kid and so many kids wanting to grow up to be an astronaut, what would you say to a kid who wants to be an astronaut?
Oh, I had the funnest experience the other day. I got to go do, at the local science museum, a talk with 5 to 10-year-olds. These were the smartest 5 to 10-year-olds ever, guys. So they had me there. I was shocked they invited me. I kept the conversation really neutral. The first question we did was how would you design a space habitat? And we talked all about different types and we kind of used it as a cultural anthropologist, cultural things to think about when you're designing space habitat. But we talked about if you were to make space laws, what would you make? And you could tell these were COVID era kids because the first thing they said was, no germs can touch aliens. And I was like, okay, no worries. And they were like, also no germs can leave your spacesuit. And I was like, okay, no worries. And they were like, also no germs can get in each other's spacesuits. And I was like, got it, guys.
Sounds lonely.
Yeah. I was like, we will bring hand sanitizer to space. And they're like, that's a good idea. And then they were like, you can never take off your spacesuit or you'll die. And I was like, this is great. They were so cute. It was a great experience. They were so smart. They knew the names of missions. It wasn't a space camp either. They were so knowledgeable about space. It was really wonderful. But they really caught on so fast to how we would think about the human elements of space exploration. It was a wonderful experience. Yeah.
Right, and the complications of it.
And the complications,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
They're concerned for aliens. They're very empathetic towards them.
Right. Okay, what questions do you guys have?
Yeah. Anything.
Do you think space exploration is like a function of like manifest destiny? Like there's no more Earth left to conquer, so you just want to keep going out and conquer the unknown?
Well, I mean, we know it is, so we can see it in the archive. Like I was in the NASA archives like 2 weeks ago, and so in the I saw documents from the 1960s that talked explicitly about like we are going to colonize, we are going to spread, we are going to settle. And then I also saw documents from the 1990s using the exact same phrases. And then you see people like Bezos and Musk also using the same words. And I think that desire, comes naturally to any species. I think it is our duty, probably as intelligent creatures, to then understand, okay, how can we continue to expand if we're inevitably going to do so in a way that's ethical, decolonial, considerate of the fact that planets and the moon mean a lot ontologically to many different cultures. So it's like that kind of awareness, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm just so fascinated by you. I've never heard of this kind of idea, because it's just really, I've never heard of people talk like what you did. So my view is like this traditional, like we grew up like this kind of thought about space and space travel. And one thing, I have so many questions. So you mentioned the technology development, even from Apollo or the earlier exploration. And I heard a lot of technologies we're using today, like GPS, was the result of those kind of the development. So if you said, well, we just let Russians go and we're not gonna do anything, will we still have a GPS today? That's one, and I'm just using this one little thing, but there's probably like a nanotech. Well, I don't know. You throw away all. I mean, all this because I'm not really technical. So that's one question. And another thing, you mentioned conquer some like a colony. To me, I was thinking this is a kind of like a transportation type of idea. Like early people, like ancient, like they wanted to walk and then run, and they invented wheels, they get in the car and get further, and it was like, oh, like birds can fly, why can't we? And we wanted to get up in the air, but then we're always bounded by this gravity. We wanted to break away from the gravity. We wanted to get to the space. I thought that's a progress. What you asked about I thought that was a really progress. We broke away from the gravity. We're completely free now.
Two
floating.
good questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for your first question about all the technologies that do come from space, there are so many. They are not to be discredited in any form. And I mean, this is why I'm still very much a proponent of unmanned space exploration. I think my bigger issue is what is being prioritized when it comes to space missions. And so often, I mean, like right now, if we look at Artemis, for example, the mission to put humankind back on the moon is really just for the sake of putting humankind back on the moon. And it's not as much to develop amazing technologies for on Earth. And I would love to see instead of space tourism, or instead of just putting humankind on the moon to put humankind on the moon, more of these technologies developed on Earth to help out Earth. So it's looking at, okay, what are we prioritizing and who's getting a say in that? So that kind of goes to your next question, which is the idea of space exploration being our next stage in technology. I think that is a really great concept, and this idea of, okay, we're going somewhere and this is our tool to get to that next location. We just have to be very careful and ask, who is going somewhere, who is going there, and who's getting left behind. You know, in what state is the planet when they're being left behind? You know, is it just the elites who have the money to go to space? And so the point is, like, we should never go to this next place, and we shouldn't never take a starship there. It's just we should wait until we've solved these issues on Earth that are going on right now. So climate change management, scarcity, the extreme civil unrest that's happening all the time in many different places. And then once we solve those issues, let's go to these beautiful other worlds, and we won't have to feel guilty about leaving anyone behind. But we're not there yet. We're just not there yet. That's the idea.
Yeah, but I'm sorry to keep talking.
No,
real quick.
it's
Yeah,
okay.
but I think if we keep working at it, like I know very little. I'm unlike you guys. I know, but I know a little bit of this space like a rocket now is reusable.
Yeah.
You can keep. So that definitely, I'm sure that brought the cost down.
It did. Yeah.
Right, and then if you keep going that direction, and eventually, like in the early days, get on the airplane, that's like unthinkable. And you just mentioned from DC from Virginia come down here, probably it's even cheaper than driving. So the cost will be down. And also you're saying some people just going to that place for the sake of going to that. I thought a lot of people today traveling, that's the purpose, like going to Machu Picchu. What do you do? Okay, I've been to Machu, I've been here, or someone like going to just kind of just been there, just like, okay, I did it in my lifetime. That was my goal for no other purpose, just for my personal satisfaction. I thought that was a travel.
Some people believe that we should go to space just to go to space to experience it. It's true, yeah.
It was like before I die, I wanted to really experience this, like look back at the Earth, that blue Earth. So maybe that was the reason. I don't know.
No, yeah.
Sorry, I'll
No,
shut up.
I didn't write this book, but I do have a thought. I do have a thought on that,
Yeah.
which is that can also be, I think, the complication, right? That people want to travel, for example, how the cost of a flight, it's gotten so low, so many people can travel. Great. On the other hand, look at what it's doing to our environment, right? And if you can just hop on a flight, people travel for work all of the time, every single week, you know,
always
all from New York to
downside.
LA, exactly.
Yeah.
That is a
So
good point.
it
Carbon
is,
emissions,
yeah, and then like the power dynamics of who's able to do that, who's
Right.
not.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to someone at NASA actually recently, and they were asking my opinion on this. This is a very interesting one. On the drawing a blank on the name of the mission because it's Peregrine mission, and there were complications about it because human remains were going to be placed on the moon, and indigenous people were very upset about that. And the guy at NASA was like, well, what do you think? You're an anthropologist. And he said, you know, the first thing I said to him, I was like, you need to ask the indigenous people, not me. And I said, honestly, it's tough because just because one group of people does have a belief system that we shouldn't put remains on the moon, why should we also there's another group of people here, the non-indigenous people, who also have belief systems that we should. And you're dealing with not actually just one religious group, but another religious group who wants their remains on the moon. And so at some point, what you need to do is create an international treaty to sort this out, just like they've done in Antarctica and in the seas. Because you can't just say, as much as we would like to, like, that just because they are an indigenous community, they have all rights to that planetary body. That's not fair to the other individuals who also have beliefs regarding the bodies. There's always going to be a sticky situation regarding, what's most important is we kind of have an awareness about the complications, and that there are many, many voices involved in these conversations, and that's one of the biggest things this book brings up, is the fact that right now there are not many voices. There are not enough voices.
Yeah, I think that's great. You that that's another point of view. I mean, I've never heard of this idea, so I thought that was so wonderful. And I thought for space exploration, one of the purpose was like maybe we look for other element, other resources, so we're not maybe very little on Earth, and we're gonna run out, and maybe we find some substitute, or maybe another planet or whatever. So rather than wait for we completely run out and we haven't developed technology to go elsewhere, I thought that was one of the reasons to explore what's out there.
Well, before I answer that
No.
question, I will answer someone else's question, and then I'll come back to.
I'm sorry.
Because I can talk about resources all day long because I'm doing my dissertation on it, and I'm forced to, guys. But
Yeah, go ahead.
but someone else had their hand
I'll
raised.
keep my mouth
Yes,
shut.
you know.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, a lot of your answers look to be centered a certain amount on the commercial aspect of space tourism.
Mm-hmm.
And you might argue that the technology transfer or the trickle down to society is smaller on those ones versus what, let's say, the European Space Agency that centered most of their exploration on remote sensing, or NASA. Do you explore that on your book? Do you talk, because it looks like you're putting all of it together, and while I agree with a lot of the stuff you're saying, it really, Virgin Galactic and what NASA is doing, basically nothing to do with each other.
No, you're right. I mean, to be honest, it's like, so this book is very focused on commercial because, I mean, that's where I was centered at the time. And like, I don't have a methods section in this book that talks about that, but if it was a dissertation, I would and be like, this is where my research was located. The asteroid mining book is the same thing. Like, it's commercially it's commercially located and American focused. I have not yet done a lot of European research. My spaceport stuff talks a little bit about international spaceports because I just did so much work on spaceports. But no, you're right. I mean, I haven't looked at an EU context that much, and I'm very interested to, because I think if we look at, for example, like the Japanese context, the Indian context, it's so different. And so you're right in that I think I am unfair in making completely general statements about the global space landscape because I have not done research on those and the Russian. I mean, I've never gone out and conducted field work with Russia or conducted field work with China. And what does that look like? What do their space communities look like? I think it would be so different and fascinating, or very same. We don't know.
But you mentioned a couple of times that we shouldn't prioritize the private commercial companies. And I know SpaceX does this now as a shadow for NASA. These are private individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Should we really care what they put their resources? In other words, think about the automotive industry. All we need is a car to take us from point A to point B. There's cars for $10,000. What are you gonna do? Tell the 99% of the world that drives a more expensive car, hey, you shouldn't spend your money on this. We should be saving the planet. Which, by the way, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being devil's advocate. But the point is that if Richard Branson or Jeff Bezos want to do something with their money, which is, as you know, a total zeros, they don't make any money, will never make any money, they will die and still pouring money into that. How do you regulate that?
I think that there is.
Taxpayer money is different.
Yeah, I think that to an extent we should absolutely consider the public and private landscape here together and how they influence each other as we think about these stories, because they absolutely influence each other and have more and more since the 1980s. I mean, especially in like the policy realm and how these things have gotten legalized. So when I say like, okay, what the space industry is prioritizing, the motivations of the space industry, I mean, I do think of them as a whole, and because, you know, the private space industry is influencing Congress, right? They're influencing the passing of legislation. They're influencing what technology is developed. Now, should we care like, how much should we care? I think we should keep in mind that so many of these hundreds of microspace companies could go bankrupt in the next 10 years. So how much power do they really have, you know, in the long term? It's tough to say, but like, you know, this asteroid mining project has been really interesting because I'm truly exploring like where did these small commercial space companies come from, and how deeply woven into the private industry are they? You know, how much influence do they have over each other? You know, did they come out of, you know, the terrestrial mining landscape? And there's this huge web, and so I think it's safe to say within the American context that yeah, there's a lot of intermingling there, to an extent that it does matter when it comes to scientific development, technological development. In the end, NASA has the money though, right? Really, it does. It has the money that counts. But no, I think we should consider them together. I think we should remember their differences, you said, you know, but I think we should remember how they influence each other.
I can see your point from the policy point of view,
Yeah.
especially coming from DC. I don't see it from the technology side. I think NASA does basically 10 times more science per dollar now than when I started working with them 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And the trickle down into society, people don't even people like me that work on the industry, I still amazed at how much it is, and they don't tell anybody. So people go through their daily lives not knowing that their car doesn't fall out anymore, and that came from NASA. Or, I mean, there's literally thousands. People know about the GPS and weather
There's so many
forecasts,
behind it.
Yeah.
but there's so much more.
NASA does so much. Oh, by the way, I have not done work on like government space operations, but other anthropologists have, and they have written books. So if you're interested, I can show you them. They're very cool. So
I am really interested because there's a huge
yeah.
ecosystem of people that are, it's like a religion, like you said. And you cannot be a naysayer about anything because
Yeah.
you become
And they didn't-
devil immediately and people attack you. Even if you at least your point is clearly, you know, ground control. And you have an astronaut sitting on it.
I didn't design the cover.
I love it.
It's a great cover.
Yeah.
But my opinion is that there should be, and just not, like, people take it as our religion almost. Right?
Yeah.
The reason goes out the door. You know?
Yeah, I've seen that too. But there's an anthropologist who she worked when Spirit and Opportunity were being developed, and she wrote a whole book on that. It's very cool. There was an anthropologist who actually did work on how scientific missions are created at NASA, like how it is passed through the bureaucracy. So that's fascinating. And then someone who did work on the Nemo project. And,
I just want to say too, something that really stands out about your book is that, like, we're talking a lot about, you know, academic. It can sound academic, but there's so much of you in the book, and it seems like you really wrote it in more of an, you know, like autoethnographic way.
yeah, I mean, it is like very memoir
Very readable.
style.
Very
Yeah.
readable.
So if you pick it up, it is not a traditional nonfiction work or an academic book. Don't let it scare you. The first whole section of it is basically what is an anthropologist, what is a space anthropologist, and why did I do that? I don't know why I did that. I think I had all this stuff in my head, and I just wanted to write it that way. But yeah, no, it is the coming of age of an anthropologist working in STEM, and it is meant to show my journey of how I did fieldwork as an anthropologist working in science and tech. What does that look like? How do anthropologists do that? How did I get a field site? You know, how did I conduct research? You know, what was it like to be really, really young and a woman on these sites that were all men in the middle of the desert? What was it like to work in policy as an anthropologist, where, you know, everyone else was an engineer and kind of looked down on me for being a social scientist. And so it is very memoir in style, and I hope you guys enjoy it for that. But yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Do you know what the next, like, can you predict what the next technology that they're working on through space exploration could be? Like, are they using quantum physics or like quantum computing for anything like that? Like, are they pushing that advancement?
For space exploration, like
are
the
they
next
are they
technology.
utilizing it in any way that might help push that out? I'm
Gosh.
just curious.
They're always making something new.
Maybe that's too specific in the weeds on it, sorry.
I'm trying to think. Good question. I'm deep into it. Like, I still see all of my space friends and stuff like that, and I know about all sorts of things. But and there's a million different active NASA missions, right? But and commercial stuff. And I'm so deep into the thick of the asteroid mining world right now, which is not, you know what's crazy about the asteroid mining stuff? I do all these interviews, right? And unanimously, the space miners have all told me that they think space mining should happen. These are the active space mining companies in the bankrupt ones, because there was a big wave of it in the early 2010s. Space mining should happen, but none of them think it's going to. There's this like weird conflation of ideas.
Oh, it's crazy complicated.
It is. Yeah, and it's not like you imagine it in the expanse. It's very small scale. But anyway, probably something to do with AI, or I think unmanned space exploration will continue to advance. You know, we had a helicopter on Mars, and I think we'll see other really cool stuff like that, or I hope we will. The nerd in me wants more stuff like that, like some other really cool unmanned stuff like that, you know. So.
Can I ask a question too? And maybe it's not clicking because I didn't read the book, but it's interesting. I would look forward to it. And when I told my husband we're going to this lecture, I'm like, it might be a flat earther. I have no idea.
I got hate emails from them.
Yeah.
I posted a
I'm
picture
sure.
of the
Oh,
curvature
yeah.
of the. I didn't. Somebody else did, but it had my name. Oh my God! I didn't even know they existed. They're real.
Oh yeah.
The
And
flat
I'm like,
earthers?
Yeah.
You're a faker. Why
Yeah.
are you using Photoshop?
Yeah.
I
It's
didn't
like an
post it. I don't know what you're doing.
appetizer before we go to dinner. But anyway, really interesting. What I think that's not clicking for me, and maybe it's in the book, is it doesn't sound like you're on your own mission to make sure no child ever wants to be an astronaut again, right? You're not like everyone look down, don't look up, like none of that. So is it like an opportunity cost of like, hey, listen, we're allocating resources in ways that could be used better, in ways that could be fairer, and then is that what's happening? Is that like you're getting people angry because they're saying like you don't get to decide that?
Yeah,
Like, I think what's not
so-
clicking for me is that part of it. Yeah.
might be helpful.
Sure, yeah. I mean, they call this idea the caretaker's demand in the book, but which is just a name for the idea that right now, at this very moment, rather than put resources towards human space exploration, we should focus on unmanned space exploration. So rovers and probes and just things that don't involve humans. And I would even say just like 90% don't involve humans.
Yeah.
And instead, we should put the resources that we were using for human space exploration towards the most pressing issues on Earth, which might shift from decade to decade, generation to generation. And so identify some of those issues in the book, like climate change management, and I say scarcity, so in other words, the distribution of resources across the globe, civil unrest, as in, wars around the world. And I talk about strategies for dealing with those issues. Some of those are a little, they sound sci-fi, but in other words, I talk about some of the things that prevent us from dealing with those issues. For example, it can be really hard to deal with a pressing issue on Earth over generations. So I talk about how, if we had a governing body that ensured that we dealt with something like climate change management over multi-generations, and Kim Stanley Robinson presents this idea in Ministry for the Future, it would prevent a presidential administration from shutting it down in between administrations. And you have this issue where like one administration wants to go to space, the next one doesn't. One wants to go to space. So how do we smooth things over and make sure big issues like, okay, we need to take care of our environment are managed? Then once Earth is just a little bit more stable, a little bit more maintained, a little bit more cared for and loved, then we figure out how to get lots of people from lots of different countries involved in a conversation about human space exploration, and we start to work on that. And that's the idea. And people get mad, you know, before this book was out, I posted a picture of the cover. That was it, just the cover. And I was like, the book's on pre-order. And I had 3,000 angry comments about it. Just the cover. They didn't even see the inside. And it was just because people really love space. People really love space, and they don't want anyone to not love space. And you can go on LinkedIn and see these comments, and it was just, I don't know, it's just people being very passionate about their beliefs. That's it.
And to be clear, you love space. You don't not love
That's
space.
true.
Like, it's not that you don't love space.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, hi.
I have a question. Sounds like your book has a strong cause that you want people to get interested in. Are you interested in that cause as much as you are as in writing?
That's a good question. I mean, I love being a writer. I've been a writer since I was a little kid. I mean, I never thought I'd be like a nonfiction writer, you know. I wrote fiction manuscripts when I was a young college kid, and none of those ones got published. And now I'm not just working on the asteroid mining book, but a book that has nothing to do with space, and I love writing. I mean, this cause is really important to me, but so are other causes, you know, like women's rights and just freedom of speech, all sorts of causes, you know. And so it's tough. I mean, it's like asking, like, do you love your creative pursuits as much as your causes? It's a tough question.
Sounds like writing has been a lifelong journey for you, and you really like that.
Have, yeah.
Sounds good. Say the people were very moved by your cause and decided to pursue that, and they wanted someone to then, bring the words together on their research and things like that. Would you take that to be part of your lifelong journey, or would you like to continue to write individual books on different causes?
I mean, it's tough. I think work-life balance is important, you know. I don't know if I'd want to be only a public speaker. I think that's a different lifestyle. I think I'm happy balancing it all out. You know, I want a career as well. So it's a good question, though.
Yeah, you answered my question. Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, if not, then again, you should grab the book downstairs, and Savannah is happy to sign the books and stick around for a little while. But let's give her a round of applause. Thank you so much.